Fog spreads across the asphalt of an abandoned truck depot like a shroud over a dead place. Dmitry Volkov slowly walks between the dilapidated hangars, clutching a worn photograph in his hand. In the picture, he is 8 years old, sitting in the cab of a blue KAMAZ truck next to his father. His father is smiling, unaware that in a month he will be gone forever. 25 years have passed since that October day in 1995. 25 years without answers, without peace, without a grave to bring flowers to. But today everything will change. Dmitry stops in front of a distant hangar. The iron gates are half open, and darkness reigns inside. He takes out a flashlight. A beam of light cuts through the darkness, and his heart stops. There, under the gray tarpaulin, familiar contours can be made out. The shape of the cab, the size of the body, even the crack in the rear window. "Dad, I found you," Dmitry whispers, his words echoing through the empty hangar. He pulls off the tarp. It's a blue KAMAZ 5320 with the license plate number 0456 TR57. It's the one. His father's truck has been standing here for a quarter of a century, covered in dust, but undamaged. It's as if it was waiting for this moment. But how did it get here? And more importantly, where is Alexander Volkov himself? To answer these questions, we need to go back in time, to that fateful day when it all began. October 15th, Nidwavtiv, Sunday. The city of Oryol awakens in the pre-dawn mist. In a small two-room apartment on Komsomolskaya Street, an alarm clock rings. It is 5:30 in the morning. Alexander Volkov opens his eyes and looks first at his sleeping wife. Nina is lying on her side, her blonde hair scattered across the pillow. In the next room, 8-year-old Dima is snoring. It's a normal morning for a normal family, but this morning will be their last. "Sasha, don't go," Nina mumbles sleepily, feeling her husband get out of bed. "I have to, honey. It's a last-minute trip and the pay is good." Alexander moves silently around the apartment, getting ready for the road. He is 42 years old, 18 of them behind the wheel of a truck. Reliable, efficient, he has never let his customers down. At the Rustrans Transport Company, he is respected by both drivers and management. In the kitchen, he brews strong tea and cuts bread with lard, a typical trucker's breakfast. It's still dark outside, but soon he'll be on his way, Oryol, to Rostov-on-Don, 680 kilometers. The cargo is valuable, industrial equipment worth 2.5 million rubles. "Dad, are you leaving already?" Sleepy Dima appears in the doorway in his pajamas with cars on them. "Yes, son, but I'll be back soon with a present for you." "What is it?" "It's a surprise." Alexander picks up his son. "Take care of your mom, okay? You're a man now." Dima nods, pressing himself against his father's chest. He doesn't know that this is their last hug, that he will never hear his father's voice again, never smell his cologne and tobacco. At 6:45, Alexander kisses his wife and son goodbye. Nina sees him to the door, as she always does. She has done this hundreds of times. But today something weighs heavily on her heart, although she cannot understand what it is. "Sash, be careful on the road." "I always am. Wait for me on Wednesday evening." Wednesday will never come, not for their family. The Rustrans bus depot is located on the outskirts of Orel, near the bypass road. Alexander arrives right on time, at 6:45. The yard is still almost empty, with only security guard Petrov dozing in his booth and dispatcher Valery Krotov busy with paperwork in the office. The KAMAZ 5320 is already prepared. Fueled, checked, and documents are in order. Alexander conducts a pre-trip inspection. Everything is fine. The cargo, machine tools and equipment for a factory in Rostov, is securely fastened in the back. Volkov, go get your route slip, Krotov shouts from the office. Valery Krotov has been a dispatcher for 3 years. 38 years old, unremarkable, nervous. He is always counting, writing things down, fussing about something. The drivers dislike him. He is too pushy, too nosy. He always sticks his nose into other people's business. The documents are ready. Krotov hands over a folder. The route is standard via the M4. Do you know the address in Rostov? Of course I do. It's not my first time there. Good. Krotov smiles strangely. By the way, Sasha, I have a little job for you. You can earn some extra money. Alexander becomes wary. Illegal trips happen in their company, but he doesn't participate in them. His principals won't allow it. What kind of job? Just a little something. You need to drop off a load on the way. The money's good. No, Valera, I don't do that kind of thing. Think about it, Sasha. You have a family, a son growing up. You can use the money. But Alexander is already leaving the office. He doesn't know that Krotov is watching him with a strange expression on his face. He doesn't know that this conversation will decide his fate. At 7:30 a.m., the KAMAZ leaves the depot. Alexander waves to the security guard and turns onto the M4 highway. His last trip begins. The road to Voronezh is uneventful. Alexander loves these morning hours behind the wheel. He can think, plan, dream. He dreams of buying his own truck and starting his own business. Another year of working for someone else, saving money, and then freedom. At 12:30 p.m., he stops at the Dorozhnoye Cafe near Tula. Lunch, rest, chatting with colleagues. Alexander meets some drivers he knows and exchanges news. Everything is as usual. Volkov, are you going to Rostov? Asks Mikhail Krupsky, an old friend. Yes, I'm taking some equipment there. I'm in a hurry to get to Krasnodar. Want to go together? Sure, it's safer in a convoy. They agree to meet at a gas station in Voronezh. Alexander doesn't know that this will save his life. More precisely, it will prolong it by several hours. At 2:20 p.m., when the last radio signal is received, Alexander contacts dispatch and reports his location. He is near Voronezh, and everything is going according to plan. Krupsky is driving alongside him, and they talk on the radio and joke. Valerka, I'm in Voronezh, Alexander reports to Krotov. The cargo is fine, and I'm on schedule. Roger, Volkov, have a safe trip. These were the last words Alexander spoke on the radio. After that, there was silence for 25 years. What happened next remained a mystery for a long time. Mikhail Krupsky later told investigators that at around 3:00 p.m., they stopped at a gas station in Voronezh. Alexander filled up the truck, bought cigarettes, and said he would continue on alone because he needed to make a small detour. What kind of detour? The investigators asked. He didn't say. He just smiled strangely. He said, Valerka asked me to check something. No one saw Alexander Volkov again. The KAMAZ truck with its valuable cargo vanished into thin air as if it had never existed. This was the beginning of one of the most mysterious stories in Russian crime in the 1990s. October 16th, Monday. Alexander was supposed to arrive in Rostov yesterday evening, but no one was waiting for him at the factory. The cargo had not arrived. The recipient called Rus Trans. Where is your driver? We needed to receive the equipment yesterday. Krotov was nervous, trying to call Alexander. The radio was silent. In 1995, ordinary drivers did not have mobile phones. Where was Volkov? Maybe there was a breakdown, suggests director Arkady Plotnikov. Sasha would have let us know. Krodov shakes his head. He's not that kind of person. But with every passing hour, it becomes clear that something serious has happened. Alexander Volkov has disappeared along with the truck and its cargo worth 2.5 million rubles. October 17th. Nina Volkova goes to the police. The officer on duty takes a missing person report but doesn't pay much attention. In the turbulent 1990s, people disappear often. Some of their own accord, some not. Maybe your husband decided to start a new life, suggests the lieutenant. What are you talking about? Nina flares up. He would never leave his son. Well, life happens. My husband was murdered, Nina cries. Find him. But finding Alexander Volkov turns out to be not so easy. Not easy at all. On October 18th, a criminal case is opened under the article, Theft on an Especially Large Scale. The investigation is led by Major Igor Semenov, an experienced investigator with 15 years of experience. A strong man with piercing eyes, he has seen a lot. But this case will become one of the most difficult in his career. Semenov starts with the basics. He checks Alexander's entire route. He interviews staff at gas stations, cafes, and traffic police posts. The following picture emerges. The KAMAZ truck made it safely to Voronezh, but then it disappeared. He was seen at the traffic police post near Voronezh at 2:50 p.m., reports Junior Lieutenant Orlov. He drove by calmly, without any violations. And then no one remembers anything. He disappeared into thin air. Semenov examines the cargo. Machine tools, equipment, spare parts, everything is expensive and easy to sell. The motive for theft is obvious. But how do you steal a heavy truck in broad daylight on a busy highway? Either an attack in a deserted place or conspiracy, the investigator muses aloud. The conspiracy theory seems unlikely. Everyone knows Alexander is an honest man. 17 years of impeccable work, no debts, no ties to crime. Besides, he left his wife and young son at home. What sense would it make to run away? Robbery, Semenov decides. They stopped him, robbed him, killed him, hid the body, and stole the car. But where is the body? Where is the car? All the ravines, forests, and abandoned buildings in the area have been searched. The result is zero. Days, weeks, and months pass. The case of Alexander Volkov's disappearance is becoming more detailed, but there are no clues. Semenov interviews all Rustrans employees, studies the company's financial documents, and checks the management's connections. And he finds some interesting facts. Director Arkady Plotnikov turns out to be not such a simple businessman. He has connections with shady people and several convictions in his past. And dispatcher Krodov is acting strangely. He is nervous and confused in his statements. Krodov knows something. Semenov is convinced. What exactly? Asks the chief. That's what I have to find out. But Krodov stubbornly denies everything. Yes, he last spoke with Volkov at 2:20 p.m. Yes, he reported his arrival in Voronezh. No, he didn't offer any shady deals. No, he has no idea what could have happened. Maybe he was attacked by gangsters, he suggests. These are dangerous times. There are a lot of bandits around. The theory is investigated. There are indeed several gangs operating in the Voronezh area, but none of them specialize in attacks on truck drivers, and the KAMAZ is too conspicuous to hide for long. The truck must have been dismantled for parts right away, says the expert, or repainted and sold. Semenov issues a search alert for all regions. Look for a blue KAMAZ 5320 with license plate number 04586 TR57. They check auto parts markets, parking lots, and truck depots, to no avail. January 1996. A burned-out blue Kamaz is found near Tula. Semenov rushes to the scene with his heart in his mouth. Could this be the answer? But his hopes are dashed. The license plate numbers have been changed, but an examination shows that this is not Volkov's truck. It is a different make and model, and was manufactured in a different year. Another dead end. Nina Volkov comes to the investigator every week. She makes the same request, with the same tears in her eyes. Find him. I know he was killed. At least find his body. Semenov tries to give her hope, but he himself is increasingly doubtful. 3 months have passed, and he hasn't made any progress. Alexander Volkov disappeared as mysteriously as he vanished into the fog. "Mom, is Dad coming back?" asks little Dima. "He will, son. He will definitely come back." But months turn into years, and Alexander does not return. In 1997, the court declares him dead. Nina receives a pension for the loss of her breadwinner and gets a job as a saleswoman in a store. Life goes on, but questions remain. Where is Alexander Volkov? What happened on that October day in 1995? Who is to blame for his disappearance? The answers to these questions lie in an abandoned hangar under the tarpaulin of a blue Kamaz truck. But there are still 25 years of waiting, suffering, and searching ahead of them. 25 years before a son finds what he has been looking for his entire life. And the truth that will be revealed to him will turn out to be worse than his darkest assumptions. Part 2. Revelation, September 2020. Private Detective Maxim Orlov sits in his office on Lenin Street and studies a thick folder labeled The Volkov Case. 5 years ago, Dmitri, a young mechanic obsessed with finding his missing father, came to him. Over the years, Orlov has become not just a detective to him, but almost a relative. 43 years old and a former operative, Orlov knows the value of every lead. There were many in the Volkov case, but they all turned out to be false. Until today. The phone rings sharply, breaking the silence. The number is unfamiliar. Orlov speaking. "This is Pyotr Kuzmin. I need to meet with you." "Urgent. What's it about?" "The case of the truck driver who disappeared in '95, Alexander Volkov." Orlov straightens up in his chair. In 5 years of investigation, he's had dozens of calls like this. But there's something different in Kuzmin's voice. The desperation of a dying man. "Where shall we meet?" "Hospital number 4, oncology ward. Room 12. I don't have much time left." Orlov drops everything and rushes to the hospital. His intuition tells him that this call will change everything. Pyotr Kuzmin lies on a hospital bed, skin and bones, his face yellow, his eyes dull. Liver cancer stage 4. The doctors give him a week, 2 at most. "I kept quiet for 25 years, he croaks. "I was afraid. But before I die, I have to tell the truth." "What truth?" "I was a security guard at the Sokol Motor Depot. In October 1995, I saw a blue Kamaz truck arrive there at night." Orlov takes out a tape recorder, but Kuzmin stops him with a gesture. "No recordings, just listen. Go on." "It was late at night on October 16th. I was on duty as usual. Suddenly I heard cars approaching. I looked and saw our director, Zhukov, with some people. Behind them was a tow truck with a Kamaz truck. Who were those people? I don't know. I didn't recognize them. Zhukov told me to leave and not to see anything. He gave me some money and told me to forget about it." "And the Kamaz?" "They put it in the far hangar and covered it with a tarp. Zhukov said the car would be there for a long time, maybe years. No one was to go near it." Orlov feels his heart racing. Finally, a real lead. "Has the Sokol Motor Depot been closed for long?" Since 1998, Zhukov died in 2010. And I kept quiet, damn coward. Why did you decide to tell me now? My conscience got the better of me. I recently saw on the news that the driver's son is still looking for his father. I realized I couldn't take this secret to my grave. Kuzmin closes his eyes. His breathing becomes irregular. Is the truck still there? I don't know. But the hangar was sturdy, reinforced concrete. If no one touched it, Orlov writes down the address of the truck depot and hurries to the exit. He has a week at most before the only witness dies. And perhaps his last chance to find Alexander Volkov's Kamaz. The Sokol Motor Depot is located in the Yeletsky district, 40 kilometers from the city. Orlov arrives there the next day with Dmitri. The place looks like the set of a horror movie. Overgrown territory, dilapidated buildings, broken windows. Here? Dmitri asks incredulously. Kuzmin wasn't lying. The details are too specific. They walk around the area, looking into every hangar. Most are empty or littered with rubbish, but the far hangar is locked with a strong lock. Do you have a grinder? Orlov asks. In the car. Let's cut the lock. Half an hour later, the lock gives way. The iron gates creak open. Inside, it is dark and smells of damp and old oil. Orlov turns on his flashlight. My God, whispers Dmitri. In the far corner of the hangar stands a Kamaz truck covered with gray tarpaulin. The contours are familiar. The size is right. They tear off the cover and see a blue cab covered with a quarter-century of dust. The numbers, says Orlov. Check the numbers. O45B6 TR57, an exact match. Dad, Dmitri whispers, touching the cab with a trembling hand. The cab door is locked, but the lock is old. Orlov picks it with a screwdriver. Inside, it's like a museum of the 90s. On the dashboard are Java cigarettes, a cassette tape with chanson music, and a road map. On the driver's seat is Alexander's leather jacket. Everything's here, Dmitri says in surprise. It's as if he just stepped out for a smoke. Orlov searches the cab methodically, like a police officer. He checks all the pockets, crevices, and hiding places. And he finds what he's been looking for his entire life. Behind the back of the driver's seat, in a secret pocket, is a homemade hiding place. Inside is a notebook with a waxed cover and a stack of documents. A diary. Dmitri reads the inscription on the cover. A. Volkov working notes. They open the notebook to the last page. It is his father's handwriting, familiar from childhood. October 15th, 1995, 6 a.m. I'm on my last shift. Krotov offered me a dirty job again yesterday. He said the money was good. I refused, but he insisted. He said, think about your son, about the future. Something bad is brewing. Dmitri turns the page. October 14th, late evening. Can't sleep. Saw some strangers arrive at the base late today. They talked with Plotnikov for a long time. Krotov was there too. After that, he offered me the illegal job. Coincidence? Another page. October 13th, Krotov is acting strangely. Yesterday, he offered me a big illegal job. He says I just need to pick up a load in Voronezh and take it to Rostov. They'll pay us for 2 regular trips. I refused. I don't like shady deals. Krotov, Orlov says. Dispatcher Krotov. The one who was interrogated in 95? The very same, so he knew more than he said. They study the documents from the hiding place, photocopies of waybills, cargo certificates, a list of phone numbers, and among them is a piece of paper that makes their blood run cold. List of participants in Operation Transit. 1. Plotnikov A.S., Director of Rus Trans. 2. Krotov V.I., Dispatcher. 3. Zhukov V.A., Director of the Sokol Motor Depot. 4. Drivers by agreement. Operation Transit, reads Dmitri. What's this? A scheme. A criminal scheme that they tried to involve your father in. Orlov photographs every document. The picture begins to become clearer. Alexander Volkov accidentally witnessed a major scam and paid for it with his life. But why didn't they destroy the car? Asks Dmitri. Because it had cargo. 2.5 million rubles worth of equipment. They needed to sell it, but not right away. They decided to wait until things calmed down. And then they forgot. They didn't forget. They couldn't go back. Zhukov died. Plotnikov was in prison. Krotov was afraid. They searched the back of the KAMAZ truck. The industrial equipment is still there. Machine tools, generators, electric motors. Everything is in its original packaging, untouched. The cargo for which Alexander Volkov died. Now we know who is to blame, says Orlov. One question remains. Where are they? Krotov died of a heart attack in 2001. Zhukov died of cirrhosis in 2010. Plotnikov served his sentence for fraud and disappeared. But the criminals have children, relatives, accomplices. We have to find them, says Dmitri. We will. But first, we need to go to the police. With this evidence, the case will be reopened. They leave the hangar, leaving the KAMAZ truck behind. It is now material evidence in a criminal case. An hour later, Orlov calls Colonel Alexei Morozov, an old friend from the police. Morozov. Alexei, it's Orlov. Remember the case of the truck driver, Volkov? Of course I remember. Simonov racked his brains but never solved it. I solved it. We need to meet. Are you serious? Dead serious. I have the car, the cargo, and the documents. Where shall we meet? Your office, in an hour. Morozov studies the photographs of the documents, listens to Orlov's story, and asks clarifying questions. An experienced investigator, he understands that the case can indeed be reopened. Kuzmin's dying testimony is questionable, he says. But the diary and documents are evidence, and the KAMAZ truck with the cargo is direct proof. Will you reopen the case? Definitely. But we need to find the living participants in the scheme. Krotov has a son, Valery Jr. He works at the same truck depot. The one now called Oral Trans? Yes, and Plotnikov also has a son, Mikhail. He's in the transport business too. Interesting. A family business then. Morozov reopens the case. The first thing they do is arrest Valery Krotov Jr., 38 years old, a dispatcher, just like his father. He lives in the same apartment where his father once lived. I don't know anything about some Volkov, he declares during questioning. Do you know anything about a KAMAZ truck with the license plate number 0456 TR57? Krotov turns pale. No, I don't. That's strange. Your father knew. Here's his signature on the documents. Morozov shows him photocopies from his hiding place. Krotov studies them, and a look of doom appears on his face. My father died 20 years ago. But you're alive, and you know the truth. What truth? About Operation Transit. About what happened to Alexander Volkov. Krotov remains silent, but his silence speaks louder than words. 2 days later, Mikhail Plotnikov is found. 41 years old, owner of a small transport company. He lives in a cottage outside the city and drives an expensive car. Where did he get the money for such a life? I earned it honestly, he insists. From what? From freight transport. And what did your father do for a living? Also freight transport. And stealing equipment worth 2.5 million rubles. Plotnikov Jr. shudders. I don't know what you're talking about. You know very well. Morozov lays out documents from the hiding place on the table. Among them is a receipt made out to M. Plotnikov for the receipt of some equipment. That's not my handwriting, says Mikhail. An expert will determine that. In the meantime, tell me what you know about the disappearance of Alexander Volkov. I don't know anything. Then explain where you got the money for the cottage and the Mercedes. I'm developing a business. What kind of business? Your company has 2 old trucks and tax debts. Plotnikov understands. He's been caught. The only question is how much he'll get and what he'll say in exchange for a lighter sentence. I want to deal with the investigators, he finally says. We're listening. I'll tell you everything, but with a lawyer present. It's a deal. A week later, Mikhail Plotnikov gives his testimony. What he says exceeds even the darkest expectations. My father organized the scheme in 1994, he says. Krotov helped. Zhukov provided storage space. They stole valuable cargo and replaced it with cheap junk in the documents. How did it work? Simple. You take an order to transport expensive equipment. On the way, you swap it for something similar but cheap. You sell the expensive stuff on the side and deliver the cheap stuff to the recipient. The invoices are all clean. What about the drivers? Most of them didn't know. They thought they were transporting what was written in the documents, but some were in on it. Was Alexander Volkov in on it? No. Plotnikov replies sharply. He refused. He was a man of principle. And what happened? My father wanted to get him involved in a big deal. The cargo was worth $2.5 million, a good share. But Volkov flatly refused. And he was killed? I don't know the details. I only know the result. What was it? Volkov disappeared, and the cargo remained with us. Where is the body? I don't know. My father didn't tell me. Why didn't you sell the Kamaz? We planned to. But an investigation began, and my father decided to wait it out. We hid the truck at Zhukov's base, along with the cargo. We thought that in a year or two, everything would be forgotten. Why wasn't it forgotten? Semenov turned out to be persistent. He dug for 3 years, never giving up. My father was afraid to do anything. And then my father was imprisoned for another crime. Krotov died. Zhukov too. I was young and didn't understand anything. But did you receive the money from the sale of the equipment? Yes, I did. Before he went to prison, my father told me where it was hidden. I sold some of it and used the money to develop my business. How much did you sell? 30%. The rest is still in the Kamaz truck. Morozov writes down the testimony. The picture of the crime is becoming clear. Only the details remain. Who actually killed Volkov? I don't know. My father only said that the problem had been solved. Do you have any suspicions? It could have been my father and Krotov, or they hired someone. A hitman? In 1995, that wasn't difficult. Plotnikov talks for another hour. He provides details of the scheme, names of accomplices, and locations where the stolen goods were sold. Morozov realizes that this is not just a murder, but the tip of the iceberg. Over the course of 25 years, the criminal gang could have robbed dozens of drivers. How many people fell victim to your scheme? I don't know exactly. Many. Did anyone else disappear? Possibly. But I only know about Volkov. Why him? He saw too much, and he refused to keep quiet for money. What did he see? How we changed the cargo. My father thought he wouldn't understand, but Volkov wasn't stupid. And he decided to report it to the police? He threatened to. That's why they... Plotnikov doesn't finish his sentence, but the meaning is clear. A month later, 3 more people are arrested. They are retired drivers who participated in the scheme in the 1990s. Now they live quietly. But the past has caught up with them. "We thought everyone had forgotten," says one of them. "Dmitry Volkov hasn't forgotten," Morozov replies. "He's been searching for the truth for 25 years. What will that give him? Justice. His father was an honest man, and now everyone knows it. Dmitry is present at the interrogations. He listens to stories about how his father was killed. His face is stony, but his eyes are burning. "Where is the body?" he asks Plotnikov. "I don't know, honestly." "You're lying." "I'm not lying. My father didn't tell me." "Then where did your father bury him?" "My father died 10 years ago. He took the secret to his grave." Dmitry clenches his fists. 25 years of searching, and still the most important thing is missing: his father's grave. "We'll find it," says Morozov. "We'll find it." But the search drags on. They comb the forests within 100 kilometers of the disappearance site. They check abandoned quarries, ravines, and wastelands. They bring in dog handlers, geophysicists, and psychics, to no avail. "Maybe they burned it," suggests an expert, "or buried it so deep that it's impossible to find. Or maybe it's in a different region altogether." Dmitry doesn't give up. Every weekend he travels to possible burial sites. He digs, searches, hopes, and one day he finds it. Not his father, but an iron plaque with the inscription, A. Volkov. Line 3, 1995. Loving husband and father. It is homemade, clearly made on a knee. It lies under an old birch tree in the forest near the Sokol motor depot. "One of the killers had a guilty conscience," says Morozov. "He put a plaque on the grave." "So my father is here?" "Possibly. But finding the remains after so many years, I'll find them. I'll find them." Dmitry organizes an excavation. He enlists volunteers, archaeologists, and forensic experts. They dig for a week, 2 weeks, a month. And finally, they find what they're looking for: the skeleton of a middle-aged man. Nearby are scraps of clothing, shoes, and a watch. Everything matches Alexander Volkov's description. "It's him," Dmitry whispers, looking at his father's remains. "The experts will confirm it," says Morozov. "We don't need experts. It's my dad." Dmitry kneels next to the excavation site and cries. For the first time in 25 years. He found him. He finally found him. Now he knows who killed his father. He knows where he is buried. The last question that haunts him remains: why did all this happen? What made ordinary people become murderers? The answer to this question will turn out to be the most terrifying in all of history. Part 3. Justice, March 2021. The Regional Court of the City of Orel. Journalists, relatives of the victim, and curious onlookers gather in the courtroom. The trial for the murder of Alexander Volkov begins. A quarter of a century later, justice will finally be served. 4 men stand in the dock: Mikhail Plotnikov, Valery Krodov Jr., and 2 former drivers. They avoid looking at Dmitry, who is sitting in the front row next to his mother. Nina Volkova is now 64 years old. She has gray hair and tired eyes, but her back is straight. She's been waiting for this day for 25 years. Judge Elena Krasnova reads the indictment. Her voice is steady, but each word hits like a hammer. The defendants formed a criminal group to steal expensive cargo. Between 1994 and 1995, they committed at least 12 thefts. The total damage amounted to 17 million rubles. The figures are staggering. Dmitry had no idea that the scheme was so large-scale. Alexander Volkov accidentally witnessed the group's criminal activities. He was killed for refusing to participate in the scheme and threatening to go to the police. "Your Honor," Plotnikova's lawyer stands up. My client did not participate directly in the murder, but he received income from his father's criminal activities. Prosecutor Andrei Belov retorts, and he hid the crime for a quarter of a century. The judge bangs his gavel. The courtroom falls silent. The floor is given to the victim's family. Dmitry stands up and walks to the podium. He has been preparing for this moment for 25 years. What can he say to the people who stole his father from him? Your Honor, he begins in a trembling voice. I was 8 years old when my father disappeared. For a quarter of a century, I have been searching for answers to questions. Where is he? What happened? Why did he leave us? The courtroom is completely silent. Only the ticking of the wall clock can be heard. Now I know the truth. My father was not killed by gangsters on the road. He was killed by people he knew, people he trusted. He was killed for remaining honest. Dmitry turns to the doc. You didn't just steal my father from me. You stole my childhood, my youth, my right to mourn at his grave. You stole my mother's husband and my wife's hope. Nina Volkova cries quietly. Her second husband, Vladimir, sits next to her, holding her hand tightly. But the worst thing is that you killed a man for money, just for money. Objection! Krotova's lawyer jumps up. This is an emotional speech, not testimony. Overruled, says the judge. Continue. Dmitry takes a photograph out of a folder. It is the same photograph he has carried with him for a quarter of a century. This is my father, Alexander Volkov. 42 years old, an honest worker, a loving father, a faithful husband. He dreamed of buying his own truck and giving me a good education. He shows the photo to the courtroom. And this is all that's left of him. A skeleton in the woods under a homemade sign. 25 years in the ground because someone needed extra money. Plotnikov lowers his head. Krotov looks at the floor. They cannot bear the gaze of their victim's son. I ask the court to deliver a fair verdict. Not for revenge, but for the memory of all honest people who cannot be bought for money. Dmitry returns to his place. The courtroom erupts in applause. The judge bangs her gavel, but not right away. She too is moved by the speech. The next few days are spent examining the evidence. Prosecutor Belov methodically reconstructs the crime. Every fact, every detail leads to the inevitable conclusion. Alexander Volkov was a victim of greed. The scheme was simple, Belov explains to the jury. An order is taken to transport expensive cargo. On the way, the cargo is replaced with a cheap substitute. The expensive cargo is sold on the side, and the cheap cargo is delivered to the recipient. He shows the scheme on the board. In most cases, the drivers were unaware of the substitution. They thought they were transporting the goods they had been told to, but some were tried to be drawn into the scheme in exchange for a share of the profits. And did Volkov agree? Asks a juror. He categorically refused. Moreover, he threatened to go to the police. And then he was killed? Exactly. The witness who could have ruined the lucrative scheme became an obstacle. The obstacle was eliminated. Criminal expert Roman Viktorov presents the results of his investigation. DNA from the victim's clothing, traces on the KAMAZ truck, analysis of documents. Everything points to the defendant's involvement. The truck stood in the hangar for 25 years, he says. The cargo was left untouched because they were afraid. They thought they would wait until everything died down. But it didn't die down, the judge remarks. It didn't die down. The victim's son never stopped searching. Witness after witness takes the stand. Former motor depot employees, retired drivers, investigators. Gradually, A complete picture of the events of that October day in 1995 is pieced together. Retired senior investigator Igor Semenov, the same man who led the case in the 1990s, gives testimony via video link. He is now 73 years old and ill, but his memory is sharp. I knew Krotov was lying, he says, but I couldn't prove it. Those were difficult times, with many cases and few resources. Did you suspect murder? Of course. Volkov wasn't the kind of man who would disappear voluntarily, but without a body, without witnesses, our hands were tied. Do you regret not being able to solve the case back then? Semenov is silent for a few seconds. It is clear that the question is painful. I regret it every day. I've regretted it for 25 years. His voice trembles. Even through the screen, it is clear how difficult it is for him to talk about this. But the main thing is that the truth has prevailed. It's late, but it has prevailed. It is time for the defendants to be questioned. Mikhail Plotnikov is the first to be called to the stand. He is 41 years old, thin and nervous. He used to drive a Mercedes, but now he will walk in the prison yard. Defendant Plotnikov, do you admit your guilt? Partially. What do you mean, partially? I knew about my father's criminal activities. I benefited from the income from them, but I did not participate in the murder. What about covering up the crime? Plotnikov remained silent. Answer the question. Yes, I did. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Prison, disgrace, losing my business. The prosecutor moves closer. Tell me, how did you feel when you spent the money you earned from Alexander Volkov's blood? Objection, shouts the lawyer. Objection granted, says the judge. Phrase the question correctly. All right. Tell me, did you understand that your well-being was based on a crime? Plotnikov remains silent again. Then he quietly says, I understood. And how did you feel? Nothing. I got used to it. Indignant whispers spread through the courtroom. Dmitri clenches his fists. Got used to it. That's the explanation for a quarter of a century of suffering for his family. Valery Krotov Jr. is even more reluctant to testify. 38 years old, as unremarkable as his father. He worked as a dispatcher at the same motor depot where the murdered Volkov served. Did your father tell you about the scheme? Not right away, when I turned 18. What exactly did he tell you? That he and Plotnikov were involved in illegal activities, that they were making good money. And about Volkov's murder? He said it was an accident. What kind of accident? He didn't explain. He just said, one driver wanted to be too honest. We had to take care of the problem. And that didn't make you suspicious? My father said it was better not to know the details. But you received money from the scheme? Krotov nods. Yes, I did. My father shared it with me. So you also lived off blood money? I didn't kill anyone. But you benefited from the murder for a quarter of a century. I didn't know. That's a lie. You knew everything and kept quiet. The prosecutor shows documents from Alexander Volkov's hiding place. Do you recognize these papers? No. This is your father's handwriting. Lists of participants in the scheme, records of income. And here is your name on one of the lists. Krotov turns pale. So you didn't just know about the crimes, you were an accomplice. I wasn't. Then explain why your name is on the list of reliable people for difficult tasks. Krotov can't think of a response. His lie is falling apart before his eyes. Two retired drivers, Gennady Morozov and Pyotr Sukhov, give similar testimony. Both participated in the scheme. Both received a share of the profits, and both knew about Volkov's fate. We thought he had disappeared, says Morozov. And when did you realize he had been killed? A couple of years later. Plotnikov let it slip in conversation. And what did you do? Nothing. We were afraid. Afraid or greedy? Both. Their testimony dispels any remaining doubts. The picture of the crime is complete. The motives are clear. Only the final details remain. Detective Maxim Orlov talks about the search for the KAMAZ truck. How he worked for 5 years without pay, driven only by the desire to help Dmitry. How a chance phone call from the dying Kuzmin changed everything. Why did you take on this case? Asks the judge. I saw the pain in Dmitry's eyes. I understood that the guy wouldn't rest until he found the truth. Did you believe you would find it? Honestly, not really. But Dmitry believed, and his faith proved stronger than my doubts. Orlov shows photos of an abandoned truck depot, a KAMAZ truck covered with a tarp, and a hiding place with documents. When we opened Volkov's diary, I realized that justice exists. Sometimes it's a quarter of a century late, but it still comes. Expert psychologist Anna Krylova explains the mechanism of the crime to the jury. Alexander Volkov became an obstacle to a lucrative scheme. In the eyes of the criminals, he went from being a person to an obstacle to profit. So he was killed not out of hatred, but out of calculation. Exactly. Cold, cynical calculation. What's cheaper? Losing the scheme or eliminating the witness? And they chose murder? Unfortunately, yes. They valued the life of an honest person less than criminal profits. Her words make a strong impression on the jury. Some are openly outraged. But why did you keep quiet for so long? One of them asks. Fear of exposure, a habit of easy money, indifference to other people's pain, a typical portrait of accomplices to a crime. The proceedings last 2 days. The lawyers try to mitigate their client's guilt, but the evidence is too convincing. The prosecutor demands the maximum sentence. This is not just murder, Belov says in his closing speech. This is the murder of a principle. Alexander Volkov died for remaining honest in a world where honesty has become deadly dangerous. He looks around the courtroom. For a quarter of a century, the family lived without answers. For a quarter of a century, the mother did not know where her son was buried. For a quarter of a century, the criminals spent their blood money with impunity. Objection, shouts the lawyer. Overruled. Continue. Today we have a chance to right this injustice. We cannot bring back the murdered man, but we can restore the truth. We can show that in Russia, the murder of an honest man does not go unpunished. The jury retires to deliberate. Dmitry and his mother wait in the hallway. 25 years of searching, and now the final hours of uncertainty. Mom, what do you think they'll decide? They'll decide fairly, Nina replies. Your father was a good man. The truth must prevail. What if they acquit him? They won't. There's too much evidence. 4 hours later, the jury returns. The foreman reads the verdict. On the question of Mikhail Plotnikov's guilt in receiving income from criminal activity and concealing evidence of murder, the jury finds him guilty. The first blow of the hammer of justice. On the question of Valery Krotov's guilt in complicity in murder and concealment of evidence, the jury finds him guilty. The second blow. On the question of Gennady Morozov's guilt in complicity in criminal activity, the jury finds him guilty. On the question of Petr Sukhov's guilt in complicity in criminal activity, the jury finds him guilty. All four are guilty. Dmitry hugs his mother. Nina cries. But these are tears of relief, not grief. The judge sentences them. Mikhail Arkadyevich Plotnikov is sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security prison. Valery Krotov is sentenced to 10 years imprisonment in a strict regime colony. Gennady Morozov is sentenced to 8 years imprisonment in a general regime colony. Pyotr Sukhov is sentenced to 6 years imprisonment in a general regime colony. These are serious sentences. All 4 will appeal, but it is unlikely that they will achieve a reduction. The evidence is too convincing. In addition, the judge continues, the convicted men are ordered to pay 5 million rubles in compensation for moral damage to the Volkov family. Dmitry did not expect such a large sum. The money will not bring his father back, but at least it will symbolically restore justice. The hearing is adjourned. The courtroom erupts in applause. Journalists surround Dmitry and ask him questions. But he hurries to his mother. Mom, we won. We didn't win, son. Justice has been restored. That evening, Dmitry goes to the cemetery. Alexander Volkov now has a proper grave with a marble headstone. The inscription is simple. Volkov Alexander Grigorievich, 1853, 1995. An honest man, a loving husband and father. Dmitry places a bouquet of red carnations on the grave. Dad, we got justice. Your killers are in prison. Everyone knows you are an honest man. The wind rustles the leaves on the trees. The sun sets behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. But I found you. I finally found you. A woman with a 5-year-old boy approaches the grave. It is Dmitry's wife Anna and their son Sasha. Was Grandpa a hero? Asks the little boy. Yes, son. Grandpa was a hero. He didn't betray his principles, even when it cost him his life. Why did they kill him? Dmitry thinks for a moment. How can he explain the nature of human evil to a 5-year-old child because he didn't want to do bad things? And some people didn't like that. Bad people? Very bad. But they were caught and will be punished. And they won't be able to do bad things anymore? No, son. They won't be able to. The family stands at the grave until nightfall. 25 years of searching have come to an end. Not as they would have liked. Their father will not return. But the truth has prevailed. Justice has been served. A month after the trial, Dmitry receives an unexpected call. It is Colonel Morozov. We have another case, he says. It may be related to Plotnikov's group. What case? A truck driver disappeared in 1997. The circumstances are similar. I'd like to consult with you. Dmitry realizes that his father's story is not unique. How many more families are waiting for answers? How many more honest people have died because of someone else's greed? I'll help, he says. I'll definitely help. Now Dmitry has a new mission. To find other victims of the criminal group and give their families what he has been looking for a quarter of a century. Answers. Justice should not be delayed for decades. In the fall of 2021, a memorial plaque will be unveiled in the city of Orel. It reads, "In memory of the honest drivers who died at the hands of criminals. Your sacrifice was not in vain. Relatives of the victims, veteran truckers, and police officers are present at the opening." Dmitry gives a speech. This plaque is not only a memorial to those who died, it is a warning to the living. Honesty can be costly, but dishonesty is even more costly. He looks at the crowd. My father is dead, but his principles live on. Every time we choose honesty over profit, justice over compromise, we continue his work. The applause is long. People understand that Alexander Volkov's story is a story about how good is stronger than evil. Truth is stronger than lies, and justice is stronger than crime. In the evening, Dmitry returns to the cemetery. It has become a tradition to tell his father about his day. Dad, they unveiled the memorial plaque today. In your honor, too. A lot of people came. Everyone remembers you. He sits down on a bench next to the grave. You know, sometimes I think, what if you had agreed back then? What if you had kept quiet, taken the money, and stayed alive? We would have lived together all these years. The wind rustles the leaves. It seems as if his father is answering him. But I understand. You couldn't have done anything else. You couldn't betray yourself for money, and I respect you for that. Dmitri stands up and straightens the flowers on the grave. Rest in peace, Dad. Justice has prevailed, and I will live so that you can be proud of me. He leaves without saying goodbye. Now he knows that his father is always with him, in his memory, in his principles, in his choice between honesty and profit. Alexander Volkov lives on as long as his son remembers that honesty is more valuable than money, and this memory will live on forever. Final. Today, Dmitri Volkov heads the Honest Way Charitable Foundation. The foundation helps families of missing truck drivers, finances search operations, and supports honest carriers. On the wall of his office hangs a photograph. An 8-year-old boy sitting in the cab of a KAMAZ truck next to his father. Both are smiling. They do not know that in a month their lives will change forever. But they know the most important thing. Honesty always wins. Maybe not right away, maybe in a quarter of a century, but it always wins. Because justice is not the speed of retribution. It is the inevitability of truth. And Alexander Volkov's truth prevailed.